Welcome, everybody, to another installment of our look at Monarch, Legacy of Monsters on Apple TV+. I am Brad Jost, and I am joined, as always, with these lookbacks with, it's not always. Agent T is usually here. Who are you?
So I am Tom Jurassic. I'm one of the contributors here on the Jurassic Park Podcast, and I believe that Agent T has been deployed to a field base in Alaska. So unfortunately, he's not able to join us today. Absolutely no relation. Ignore the fact that we're both British. That's just a coincidence. But yeah, I have no idea where Agent T is.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll ignore that. He might be in Alaska. He might be in Siberia. Who knows? So he's not even sure, I don't think. But we are talking today about episode 5. Before we get into that, I feel like there's other things to discuss real quick. It's a great episode, by the way. I can't wait to get into it. But I had the chance to go see Godzilla -1 the other day.
Nice,
Dude, that movie is incredible. Are they showing it out in your neck of the
Yes.
woods? Yeah.
I'm scribbling down on my paper because
So
you've just reminded me I need to book a ticket for Monday.
I was gonna say, I'm like, why have you not seen it then? Because it's absolutely incredible. It was such a great movie. I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd, so please check out my review on Letterboxd. But it was just such an incredible experience, like watching that movie and
Yeah.
having no spoilers or anything, but like just having it be such like a love letter to Steven Spielberg as
Yeah.
well. It just felt like, they're channeling Steven Spielberg in the way that they're shooting Godzilla. And it felt like the entire intro of the movie really felt like a Jurassic Park, like extended universe kind of movie.
That's so awesome.
And then there's other references to other Spielberg films and stuff throughout it, and it's just like it's mind blowing. It was so good. Plus, the thing that I always love about these movies is there was a really excellent human element to this story, and like truly emotional, and just the time period, the setting, the people involved. It was just so incredible. So I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. The Godzilla stuff was scary and epic, and oh man, it was fantastic. It
Yeah.
skyrocketed to near the top of my list for this past year,
Oh, wow.
2023. So,
Okay.
so I keep my top 10, or I actually rank every movie that I've seen this year. Some of them are just kind of like, I don't know where to put this. It's gonna go here. But like once you get that top 10, then it's like definitive. So this has
Yeah.
a very definitive spot for me. So I thought it was excellent. Godzilla -1 is awesome. If you haven't seen it, which if you are watching this, you probably haven't had a chance, but definitely go see it. Tom, go see it.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
I will. And something else to touch on, obviously, is the fact that between this episode and last episode, we've also had the Godzilla X Kong trailer, which is released.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
we're like bathing in great Godzilla content right now. Like, what is happening? This is wild. It just feels awesome. That trailer was a lot of fun, dude. It was fun. What'd you
Yeah.
think?
It was so cool. I think it's kind of solidified for me a few of the things that we've discussed in the previous episodes we've done around the Hollow Earth being quite important going forward, because it's clear that this
Oh,
story
yeah.
is like all about that and all about fleshing out on that world, fleshing out on the potential risks that are present in that world. And I think that's going to be really awesome. And I think it's really awesome that actually the human leads from Godzilla versus Kong are coming back in the form of is it Jaya and also the Monarch agent who's her sort of guardian. They're both coming back, which is awesome to see.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. It just looked fantastic and fun. Like there's a very distinct
Yeah.
style that they're going for now, which feels very different than what we're getting in this show and what we got back in
Yes.
2014. The evolution of Godzilla and the monsters and everything, even Kong, has completely transformed. And I guess there's a lot of people that like are cool with that. I'm cool with it. But like I could see that like if you witnessed what you saw back in 2014 and then whenever was it 2017? I forget when the
Yeah.
next thing came out. Like it's like it's taken a totally different course, but I love it. I love seeing like Godzilla and Kong just running together, like sprinting in the
Yeah.
Hollow Earth. Like that is like, it was such a cool visual. Pink going down Godzilla's spine. Like that is incredible looking. Such a cool visual. Um, and I don't know, Kong had like some sort of like, hand thing. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It just looked so wild and not grounded at all, but like super cool, super fun, super fun.
I actually think it's interesting that it's doing things so differently, because I think, and we'll get into the conversation, but I feel like this episode is hinting towards why things are so different potentially being explained, which is actually really, really interesting. I think it's been interesting seeing that trailer and then watching this episode subsequently, because it kind of still feels like everything is interconnected, which is really awesome
Mhm.
to see.
Yeah, I think it's such a wild world that like you can believe to some extent that they could progress and get to the point where they
Yeah.
are. So,
No
so I think
soft
that's
canon
cool.
here, right, Brad?
No, it's all hard. Yeah, it's super hard. That's what I'm gonna say. Um, so episode 5, everybody. We're talking about this episode. Do these episodes have titles? Like, I actually don't think I've ever looked. Do they have titles?
I haven't noticed if they do.
We've gotten 5 episodes in and
Yes,
have
no,
no
they
clue.
they do. They do, because the last one was titled Parallels and
Oh,
Interiors.
okay. Yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right.
Let me just find the title for this one. So this one is The Way Out,
Okay. Okay. All right.
which is
Yeah.
interesting because, again, just like with Parallels and Interiors, that title has got dual meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one kicks off at the Monarch command post in Alaska. So there is like a legit place out there in Alaska. They've got them all locked up and contained. Kate, is
Yeah,
not going to be intimidated. She wants like to get out, and Kintaro's freaking out. He's channeling his inner Godzilla and just like, trying to break down the walls and stuff. And May's okay. We get to finally learn, May's doing all
yeah,
right. She's warmed up a little bit, and they're trying to intimidate May, using the knowledge of her past. Like, hey, these are your passports. It doesn't exactly look like you. Like, is this you? Like, what's going on?
yeah.
But what's her name? Duval is kind of interrogating her and just kind of like, hey, we could help each other out here if you want to. I
Yeah,
could help you, you could help me. So that was cool. And then also Tim is there, and
yeah.
I think we're definitely on this good trajectory with Tim where like he's still
Oh,
defending these
100%.
kids. He's like, look, we need them. Like they are the son and daughter of this guy, and we
Yeah,
need like they have to know something. They have to be able to help us. Maybe we should recruit them. Like they would be good assets for us. Like
yeah.
that was pretty cool. Um, and we do get a shot of somebody else in the cell. Did you catch that moment? Was that Shaw that they saw sitting
Yes,
down, or was that somebody else? I don't even
yeah.
know.
I'm fairly sure it was Shaw.
Okay, because it was a little ominous, and I'm like, well, yeah, obviously Shaw's there, so why is it like covertly like hidden so you can't see who it is?
Yeah.
But yeah, so they saw somebody else in there. I was at first I was like, yo, is that their dad? Like, is he in this jail
Oh
too?
my god.
So
Yeah. I think it's really interesting actually with your point about Tim. What this episode really starts doing right from the off start is sort of setting these fractures in Monarch as an organization, and you kind of see different characters who have got different trajectories and different ways of responding to the Titan phenomenon
Mhm.
in different ways and with different approaches. So obviously you reference May having the 2 passports, but what's really interesting is when was it Duval you said is the other Monarch agent's name?
I believe so.
Um
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, when she heads back to the room that Tim and Verdugo are sat in, they kind of don't really. engage with anything until Duval references the fact that May's the most interesting one, because clearly she's learned how to strip down a room and not leave a trace before. And then Verdugo sort of perks up and is instantly interested. So you can see that for Verdugo, she's very much that kind of traditional federal agent who is thinking inside of the box, looking for kind of the things that you would expect. And then that's juxtaposed by Tim, who is kind of presented as this whackpot in a way, but actually he is, you know, thinking more about Randa's work, thinking about the legacy of the organization and what it should be doing compared to what it is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm having a hard time reading like Verdugo and Duval. I'm like, where do they lie right now? Because like
Yeah.
I feel like we got Tim figured out, but it's like I'm not really sure where their allegiances are, and we get a lot of talk of it kind of throughout this episode. So, but in the meantime, Tim transports the crew out to Nome, Alaska, so they can get on their airplane. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like they're just like, you don't usually see this. They're just gonna let you go. Like you're gonna get your passports. We're gonna give you plane tickets. You're good to go. Like here's phones. Go ahead, go home, do whatever you
Is
gotta
that
do.
not your usual experience with federal agencies?
No, yeah, usually, that doesn't happen that way. No, but for real, like when you watch a movie, like or TV show, like they just never let the people go. Like it doesn't. There's always something like there's collateral. There's like they know us, they've seen our faces,
Yeah.
like kind of deal. So this agency is okay with that. Like I don't even know
Yeah.
if Monarch knows what they even are at this point. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, but they are resistant to trust him, but he seems genuinely sorry for he's like sorry for your loss, which cued me in that like, oh, like Randa is not anywhere like with them, because
Yeah.
he wouldn't have said that otherwise. So he's somewhere else off in the wind. But Tim does kind of like snap at them real quick, and like he's
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm trying to help you and all this stuff, and nobody's taking my help. And then he gets in the van. He's like, did I do a good job? Did
Yeah.
I do okay?
It's
So you're
interesting
getting
because
there.
you can see that clearly Duval and Verdugo have got him wrapped around their fingers,
Hmm.
and they're kind of managing what Tim's doing. I found it interesting that obviously part of this initial story with May in this episode is having the two passports, like you say, and then also at the airport, she confirms Duval's suspicions about having backed up a cloud copy of the files. And I find it
Yeah.
interesting that she did that without telling anyone. So that again is telling us that there's a lot more to this character than we're actually seeing. And clearly she has a reason to be interested in these files as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting arc, I think. I'm not really sure where they're going
Yeah.
with her character right now, because at this moment in the airport, like she just wants to go home. She just wants to get out of
Yeah.
here. But then like, realizes her friends need her help. So, I'm going to go with you guys. And there could be some more clues in San Francisco, but it's interesting. This next episode 6, I'm sure we'll get some more clarity. I would believe, but they do end up going back to San Francisco to go check on the other office, because he's got offices all over the place. So
Yeah.
we get to find some more pencil shavings maybe later on. But we do get to see a great scene here, which I loved. It was in Shaw's cell. And they were projecting
Yes.
like old footage behind him, and they were like, we didn't even know that this existed, this footage. So like that was cool. But the one shot of him just, he was like really taking it in, and he loved seeing that footage. And then he turned
Yeah.
around, and his son's face, Wyatt, but
Yes.
the character is just him. But like they projected his son's face over his face, and I was like, dang, that is a great shot. Like and I
Yeah.
imagine like as a dad, like he's got to be so proud and happy to be doing this role. I don't know what their relationship is, but like I seemingly think like that's got to be really cool, because I know if I was like in a role like that with my son, and like he played me at a different time, oh man, that would be so emotional. And
Yeah.
to see that projected on him right there, that was really cool.
I think just the whole sequence with Shaw is really interesting as well, because there's this running theme that he's annoyed with what Monarch are doing,
Hmm.
and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But in this point, you kind of get this sense that he feels that they're not doing anything, and there's this sense of inaction like post G Day on what the organization's been doing.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting because there's a point where he makes a line about them not getting anywhere, which Verdugo seems frustrated about, which is in relation to Hiroshi. So it seems as if Monarch also know that he's alive, they just don't know where he is, which is quite fascinating.
Yeah. I don't know which point, because there was a lot of different conversations
Yeah,
between Verdugo and Shaw in this episode, but like, yeah, I love his frustration, and there's a point later on where she's like, "Why now?" and I thought it was cool.
yeah,
But he's not going anywhere. He's staying put. He's not going to be
no.
released back into the wild. Um, but we
We
cut
do.
to what?
You might be about to say it. Are you cutting to the room where they're watching the interview?
I cutting to the room where Tim and
Yeah,
Duvall are questioning Shaw, or just questioning about him, and they're like, "How old is this guy? He's got to be
yeah,
90 years old." And I thought that was like great. I'm like, okay, we're not alone in thinking like, what's happening here? Like, I haven't taken the time to do the math or anything, but I know we've been questioning like, how old is this guy? He's got to be old, right? Like
yeah,
this. But they mentioned something about, like, I think it was, like, a classified mission gone wrong or something, like,
yeah.
so
Yes,
now I'm like, "Alright,
I
you."
wrote it down exactly.
Okay,
So they said that there were rumors of a mission gone bad.
okay, and then, yeah, I think there was something about being classified too, right? So
Yes.
that is awesome to hear, because we haven't had them really in the past 2 episodes. With the last episode, there was no reference to the past, and then this
Yeah.
episode only had the home video footage. So I really hope we get more from them, because I love that story as well. Like, I really want to
Yeah.
see more of them. So hopefully we do. I again, I forget how many episodes we have, but I hope we get more chances to see them, and maybe see what the heck mission went wrong or bad
Yeah.
or whatever. So and
So
yeah, go ahead.
I have a really interesting gut feel on this, which is obviously we know at this point my theory is that they're going to go to the Hollow Earth. I wonder if Shaw was stranded in the Hollow Earth for a period of time.
Hmm.
I could see that being like really, really interesting because that might explain why he hasn't been present at Monarch since then, because he was stranded for a period of time while the organization was growing without him. And you can kind of then understand why he would come back and be placed into this retirement facility, which he has tried to escape before. So clearly
Yeah.
he's not there out of his own will.
But not in a few decades or
Straight
whatever.
away.
So
Yeah.
yeah. But that is an interesting theory. I mean, they said it in, was it last week or the week before or so? They said that, like, the area surrounding these titans kind of affects people differently. So
Yeah.
maybe he just spent a lot of time, around one, and that affected the thing. But if something went bad, like, I don't know what happened there. Like, did they give him some Captain America serum at one point to try
Yeah.
to, so he could battle these things? Like, what happened
Wait,
there?
wait, wait, hold up. You mean that this is Monarch X John Walker and we are literally
Yeah.
seeing US Agent in Monarch?
I think so. Yeah, that would be absolutely perfect. So I don't know. Like, it's gonna be interesting to see, because when you say that they got stuck in the Hollow Earth, like, I don't know how that would be possible, because they had to take some
Mm.
flying spaceship down into the Earth, and then Kong's like, gripping his way all the way down or whatever. So I need to see, like, a plausible way for that to happen. And that could be
Yeah,
very easily explained if there's just some path that they just took for ages to get down, or if there's like a portal, which is perfectly reasonable
yeah,
in my mind in this universe, is just some portal that just transports them somewhere, and time moves differently at the center. Like, that very easily explained. Um, but yeah, I think that is, like, hopefully a thread that they don't leave dangling for, like, season 2 or something like that. Like,
yeah,
I hope it's just, like, kind of picked up right now. Um, but we cut to San Francisco again, and
yeah,
they are at the airport. And again, we're getting, like, a lot of visuals as far as, like, what does the world think about what has happened. And I didn't exactly get it. I think I wrote it down right, but I'm not sure. It's something about like Strata Underground Homes. Is that what the
Yes.
company was called?
Yeah, so it was, yeah, and they were selling private underground bunkers, which was really interesting because the video presentation for it on the screen is very similar to a current day um company that makes bunkers in abandoned missile silos for the
Okay.
super rich. So there
Yeah.
was quite a parallel there, which was really interesting. Um yeah,
We
can
got
I
go ahead.
I
What are
was
you
going
gonna
to
say?
say, so eventually well, actually, I assume you might want to talk about the character introduction first before I get onto the
Well,
camp.
yeah. So even just in the airport though, there's FEMA walking around. You see them.
Yes.
You see Godzilla posters all over the place about like safety and like what to do and all that stuff. And then a friend comes out of nowhere, which I was like, where'd this guy come from? Like, how did he know what was going on? Like, how did he
Yeah.
find? Like, how did he see her? And it's James from work. He's a work friend,
Yeah.
a nice work friend, James. Very sus, but it's work friend James. So they they go um, they go
Who doesn't
back
have
to.
work friend James in their life, right?
I know we all have a work friend, James. Um, but while they're driving, James is driving them back to like into San Francisco and to Kate's mom's house, which I didn't know if this was like was this Kate's like original house? Like is this where she lived with her mom, or is this where her mom no, actually I know she said something about an apartment later on, but like is this where her mom lived, or was she like displaced due to Godzilla? Cuz
Yeah.
like I thought that was fantastic that we get like in this show, we get so much world building. It's
Yes.
unbelievable. Like, yes, we get a lot of like telling. They do tell us a lot of world building, but they do show us, like we just talked about, with the underground bunkers and all the missiles that could launch at any moment from these cities and the advertisements on the walls, FEMA being all over the place. But we do get to learn that like that they do like trauma tours of
Yes.
San Francisco and these areas that have been heavily affected. They do these like very covert tours and I thought that was a really interesting piece of world building that like, oh man, there's some sickos out there that really want to
Yeah.
feed on other people's, you know, bad luck and trauma and grief. And I thought that was really interesting.
Well, you see it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's paralleled in the real world. Like, there's that island in Japan that's the abandoned city from a few hundred years ago that people go and visit all the time. And I think it's just a really interesting way and evocative, actually, way of really grounding it in this universe because, FEMA portable structures and neighborhoods that are kind of growing in the shadow of wreckage are images that aren't new to people, but particularly in the United States with Hurricane Katrina, that's the kind of thing that actually has been seen directly in the wake of that. So to then
Yeah.
have something that feels so real and grounded and gives you that kind of sense of, okay, this is the real impact that this incident has actually had on society is really, really cool. And it makes it really feel as if these are monsters that leave something in their wake, seeing um later in the episode again some of the skyscrapers and things that are ruined and just thinking actually,
My gosh.
okay, those are the skyscrapers that the Navy SEAL team that came in to deal with the Mutos were probably skyscraping between in the 2014 film. Is just so cool to think about. Like it all has this great sense of continuity to it, which is really awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Was there something you wanted to bring up before we jump to that section?
It was basically this, the
Okay.
fact that I love this so much, and I'd made a note of saying that actually, so we get a reference to the red zone, which is the zone that they go into later, which is all cordoned off by the military.
Mhm.
And what I found really cool with that is this parallels exactly Godzilla 2014 and the initial failed radiation reactor that the two characters go into when they
Mm.
return to their home.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
exactly.
that was really cool because it shows that actually in the wake of this Godzilla sighting, the same thing has happened to the environment that's happened there. Where obviously in that film, we know that Monarch are putting an exclusion zone in place. There isn't actually any radiation, but they're putting that in place to protect their secret. And it
Yeah.
almost feels like that again here, with this being put in place to hide secrets that are still lying within the ruined city. You know, I mean, the thing that sort of struck me straight away was actually, is this office just somewhere that Hiroshi had an office, or were there potentially other Monarch facilities in the city, other offices in that same building? You know, it's an interesting concept to think about. I
Yeah,
always
I
go
don't.
too deep into things, but I really love world building, and this show is doing it so well.
Yeah, I don't know how deep this portion goes, but like in my mind, it's just like, and they say it later on. These buildings are on the verge of collapse everywhere
Yeah,
because the foundations of this city are destroyed, and like literally nobody can go back there. I don't
yeah,
know that it's like we're keeping secrets, but I feel like it's just like, well, we literally can't go back here
yeah.
because this could be horrible at any
Oh yeah,
moment
it's
for a
still
load
that
of
cool
people.
parallel though, I feel,
Yeah.
with
Oh yeah,
seeing
yeah,
those two
absolutely.
big environments in the same condition.
Yeah, I love that, and I to be honest, like, and we'll get into this section, I guess. But they pull up to like the reconstruction area. They bypass the
Yes.
military checkpoint with a bribe, and there's that shot when they get out of the truck of like the Golden
Yeah.
Gate Bridge, and it's just
Yep.
so ominous and so
All the
horrifying.
mist around it, the
Yeah,
moonlight, it's
and
yeah.
so Kentaro, maybe somebody else, I forget who said it, but like, how do the people believe this didn't happen? Like, how do they
Yeah.
not treat this real? Um, and this entire scene, like this whole section with the destruction, the ominous mist, the dark, and the city. You know, you mentioned like how it looked, and like I was just getting straight up vibes of like The Last of Us, and I was like, this
Yeah.
is exactly what I want season 2 of The Last of Us to be like, because
Yeah.
that's, you know, which is set in Seattle, but like I want to see like that would be so cool. So I just thought they did a fantastic job of bringing this city to life in a way like that. I think Planet of the Apes, one of those movies, was also set in San Francisco and had like that
Yeah.
same look. So I'd like to go back and compare, but it just looked awesome. I thought it looked really really cool.
Yeah. I think they did a really strong job in terms of actually taking the time to show that environment as well, and not really rushing you through it, so you get a sense for the full scale of destruction that's followed that film.
Yeah, we kind of bypassed Kate and her mom, but back at the
Yeah.
house, she, you know, her mom was like holding back emotions when she, you know, picked up on everything that was happening there, and you could tell like she was holding back, and there was something in there that like maybe she wasn't saying, or you know, but or maybe she was just being polite, you know. But I thought that was a nice little scene there to finally get to see her mom and then see her reaction. I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting. But we do go back to Shaw. They mentioned that he tried to escape a few times. Then we go back to San Francisco. At this point, this is like, oh, all right, now we're back in like full Monarch Legacy of Monsters mode, where like we are flashing all over the place.
Oh, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up.
What do you
When we
got?
go back to shore, so I made a note of this, because we get the Monarch theme play at one point, which is really
Oh,
cool.
did it?
And it's when he says the line, Monarch has been wrong for a long, long time. So that line, I think, is the whole foundation of this show, which is, I think this is showing us that their approach up to the events of 2014 was wrong, and that they don't understand what is really going on with the Titans. And this show is now opening that up to help us understand things like the Hollow Earth, but also the other animals that are present in the planet. So the Titans we see in King of the Monsters, to show us Monarch actually beginning to understand it. So I think that's kind of the
Hmm.
explanation. And I also think that that perfectly explains why in Godzilla 2014 you have this really clandestine organization that's pretty behind the scenes in the shadows, and then in Godzilla King of the Monsters you have this large scale organization with loads of assets, because between those 2 points in time they've realized that their approach is wrong and they need to reevaluate it, and that's what this show is all about.
Yeah, you know, I wrote down that quote, but I cannot seem to find it anywhere in my notes. 'Cause So I don't know what happened to it, but maybe I don't know, maybe it disappeared. But yeah, I think you're right. This could be like a breaking point or a point where they're like, well, we need to reflect a little bit and see what's going on,
Yeah.
because they then become like agents of Shield and um. All
They
right, so
don't
we're
have the
back.
bus, they've got the USS Argo.
We're back in San Francisco again, and this is where they're like, these buildings could collapse at any moment. And then we start to get, flashbacks to like a few days. And I thought this was great because it
Yes.
was G Day
Yeah.
-2. I'm like, wow, this timing is great. -2.
Yeah.
I just saw Godzilla -1, and we're at G Day -2. So Kate meets up with her girlfriend, I was assuming at that moment, and they discuss like moving in together. And I'm like, okay. And
Yeah.
then I guess they're both teachers at the same school. So that was about it. It wasn't really a long scene. You just see them meet up,
Yeah.
and then discuss moving in together. Then we got the following day, which was G Day -1, and
Mhm.
the kids, which I thought this was interesting as well, and just it was making me very sad. But like the kids are in their classroom just watching like the monster attacks on their phones,
Yeah.
and it's just very reflective, I feel like, of the world. But like Kate is just like, yeah, we don't want to believe everything we see on the internet. And
Yeah.
then like to see her kind of shock when another teacher comes in and is like, we are keeping, keeping this monitored.
Yeah. An
Let
eye
them
on
know
it.
that these kids need to have a plan if their parents, whatever is going on. And then she got very like scared in that moment, and she's like, oh, this is real. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So
It was actually, I found that whole sequence really interesting because it paralleled for me a little bit the sequence with Madison in season 1 of Fear the Walking Dead. I don't know if you've seen season 1 of Fear,
I
but
have,
when
yeah.
they're in the school and there's like all the kids who think it's a hoax, and then there's the one kid who's like, no, this is absolutely serious. This is what's
Tobias,
happening.
was it
Yes.
Tobias?
Yeah. 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 It made me think of that in the way it was presented as this whole, okay, there's this horrible event unfolding, but actually even in that moment some people are going to think that it's a hoax, in this case our character, and therefore not take it seriously.
Speaking of not taking it seriously, we don't need to talk about Madison Clark anymore, because that was a whole thing.
Just remember, Brad, she's one of the ones who live.
Okay, well, so back to San Francisco, current day, the military are like patrolling the streets, and they spot something going on. The group ends up hiding. More flashbacks, and we get the kids like are going on the bus, and Kate's gonna take them on the bus,
Yeah.
but the girlfriend is gonna, I guess, stay in the gym or something like that with some kids. So they're about to
Yeah.
split up there. And back to the current day, we get the military still searching, and then they distract the military with the cats, which was nice. And this was a fun sequence because this is where I felt like I was like in like The Last of Us or something like that. I'm like, they're just kind of going down alleyways and hiding, and
Yeah.
sitting against old cars and
Some gentle
throwing
one
rocks,
stroke
and
of
like
guitar playing in the background.
there was a lot of silly songs, singing and stuff like that. Kentaro
Oh
was
yeah.
trying to cheer up Kate with some silly songs,
That
and
made me laugh so much that you're going through this highly classified environment and then he starts shouting these songs at the top of his voice. Like
I
this whole
know.
episode was him doing that. Him then getting mugged off later when they say something, and he's like, oh well, you could be a cat man as well, and they're both
The
just like,
Catman,
what?
yeah. I know. Even I was like, "What is he talking about right now?" But yeah, he's singing way too loud. I was thinking that same thing, and they just literally escaped some military, and now he's just like screaming. Like, you have to imagine how silent that city is with
Yeah.
nothing happening, and then with one person just being like, "Yo!" and just
I
like,
just love the thought of those soldiers around the corner. Like, what the
yeah.
hell is that? Is that in tune?
Well, the military does spot them, which was a great sequence. They did the kids are just like, I'll call them kids, but they're just walking out, and then like the military is just like standing there with their lights, and they're like, "Hey, get back here!" So they head down into a train station again. I'm thinking The Last of Us. This is very much The Last of Us. But they head down into some sort of station, and this is where like Kate is almost doing what Kentaro did in the last episode by like blending realities a little bit and not knowing where she is. And I thought it was really cool. There, like she sees May up ahead, and then the ground's like
Yeah.
like kind of imploding, and but then it flashes to like sequences with Godzilla and stuff. And I thought that was really
Yeah.
cool. How it was like she was having a hard time blending the realities
I
and
thought they
struggling with
handled
these
it really
flashbacks.
well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's clear that she was suffering from PTSD or something similar,
Yeah.
and I think it's really interesting because they handle that quite sensitively. And actually, the main traumatic event, I think they don't ever give you an answer on because we don't know if her partner survived or not. Like ultimately, we don't find out if she was killed on G-Day or not, and that's not something that's answered. It's implied, so it's implicit that she did die, but you don't see that. And I think that kind of working around that worked really well because it helps it to feel a lot more grounded, and actually you understand that there's an emotional level to this trauma that's causing it to have such a great impact on her character.
And when you say her partner died, which one are you
Which
talking about?
May, don't. I saw that and I was like, it's the day after. She might be dead, and you're in bed with someone else.
No, this no, this was still day one. So I assume we flashed back again
Wait,
to
what?
so yeah, at one point it went back to day one, so or minus
Yeah.
one. So we were at G-Day for a little bit, and then we went back to -1. So
What is it
She-
with these randers and slinging it round the place? I do not understand.
I know, dude. I'm like, man, this family, this is rough. Like, so on day two or -2, the partner gave her the key and said like, let's move in. And then she just, I think, spiraled, right? And then she
Yeah.
had an affair or had a different partner. I don't even know what the deal is, but and then we see on that G-Day again at some point. I think there was like
Yeah.
like you didn't want this, you didn't want to be happy kind of
Oh,
moment.
what she says is it's heartbreaking because she says we were good, but good wasn't good enough for you or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, oh, like imagine that's the last thing she says to you before she dies.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that. Because before we saw the second partner, I was like, yeah, is she out there still? Is this person out there anywhere
Yeah.
or not? Does it matter? Like, I have no idea. But now I'm like, oh, I don't know. It might not even matter at
Yeah.
this point. It's just trauma, building up, and I don't think it really even matters. And Kate talking about how like she just always is letting people down, and she's following kind of in her father's footsteps. So I feel like in
Yeah.
the last episode there was a lot of like commentary about how Kentaro is like, am I my dad? Am I seeing myself in him? And now the same thing is happening here with her, with Kate, and she's feeling that same thing. She's kind of following in his footsteps a little bit. So I thought that was interesting.
I'm just waiting for us to find out that Bill actually had 100 partners as well, and there's loads of other random kids out there too.
There could be. But Kentaro found a way out. The Mr. Catman there followed the cats through some tunnels, and they found the pointy tower thing that's in San Francisco. So I think it's the same tower that Sonic the Hedgehog had a battle on with Dr. Robotnik.
I've not seen that film.
You should, man. It's fantastic. But yeah, so and I just was at that tower as well. I was playing Horizon Forbidden West, and I was standing right at that tower as well.
This was built around you, right? You've just been at that tower.
Yeah.
It said Godzilla -2 when you just see -1. I think they literally wrapped production on this episode the day you saw Godzilla.
I think so. I'm pretty sure, yeah. But they head up to her dad's place, and he's got the map, and which I thought was hilarious. Like everything that came post this map ripping down, like Kentaro's like, I know where all the secrets are, and just rips the map off the wall. And I was like, no, we needed that. Like that was important information. You hear all of the pins drop on the floor. And then he's like, wait, where is the... And then they have to recreate it basically anyway. I'm sure all the information was probably already there, but now they got to do, which I thought was nice. It was like my art installation was about reflections and lights and
Yeah.
or whatever he said. But
And you had that
they
moment where Neill was like, I remember as well, and you could see them like share a moment for a second, which
yeah.
was nice.
Yeah, so they put it up on the wall and they shine the light. I loved seeing that. Was a great shot of like the sun coming
Mm-hmm.
up, and it was really nice. But it projects the locations. He's fiddling with it for a little bit and finds that it's got San Francisco, Alaska, and Africa. But there's like so many. It felt like there was other pinpoints,
It looked like there were about 7,
and but
but
but they only mentioned those 3 out loud. And they're like San Francisco, Alaska, Africa. That's the path he took, or whatever. So.
Africa.
What kind of details do you have on the Africa Monarch facility? Anything?
I'm so glad you've asked that because I've just brought the map up to look. So there's Outpost 10, which is a tropical African outpost that contains Kamacuras. And there is Outpost 01. Outpost 1 is an outpost located deep in the Congo rainforest containing Megagyrus and her swarm of Meganula. Let me just, that was probably a horrific pronunciation, but I have to know right off the bat, stop nodding. Oh, right. That is quite interesting. I don't think it is the thing that we're seeing in this, the thing that we saw on the Lawton, but Megagyrus is a essentially super flying dragon.
Okay.
That is the actual subtitle, Super Flying Dragon. I wonder. It has been described as a dragon, right?
Yeah.
Have we already seen how this ends? Oh man,
Yeah, it's possible.
I think we might have done. More to the point, this is definitely a map of Hollow Earth portals or Hollow Earth entry points.
Yeah, you think so?
I'm convinced. Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that we clearly see one in the Godzilla X Kong trailer in the water as well.
Yeah.
So
Maybe that's a
I'm fairly
tropical
convinced
location.
that yes. Yeah, so this is where I say I think Monarch is wrong, because I think that this whole time they've been ignoring what Randa's done to map this out. Maybe they've just got Skull Island and they think that that's the only portal to the Hollow Earth. And this is actually showing us that there's more everywhere else, and it's explaining how these other creatures keep coming through. So I think what I'm really curious about is where on the timeline all of these Monarch outposts exist, and if all of them as we see them with the Titans in them exist at this point in the timeline, or if we might see something happen that leads some of the outposts we saw in the viral marketing to then exist. I think that could be quite interesting. So I think this is really setting the tone for, again, actually what Monarch thinks they understand about the Titans and their origins is so different to what they actually are. And I tell you something else, actually, thinking about this, that could be quite interesting. I don't know, and I'd have to go away and read up on the lore, but I don't know when Monarch found Ghidorah in the ice. But if they've already found Ghidorah at this point, wouldn't it be reasonable to think that maybe they were just assuming that all of the Titans were aliens up until this point, and perhaps this proves that wrong or something similar?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I really like what you're spitting out there, dude. That was fire, man. I like it.
This is
good
why you
theories.
have me on this show, right? Screw you, Agent T. Tom Jurassic is way better.
I'm just here to nod, man. That's it. I like what you're throwing down. But they do end up making it back in time once daylight arrives, and her mom mentions that, like, she kind of had a feeling about this, but she didn't really want to know the truth. She didn't want to see it with her own eyes, so that's why, like, she sent her out there, and she kind of liked having like a part-time husband, but that also meant like a part-time father, which she, wasn't into it. Kentaro goes and calls his mom. May, I'm like, oh, she's gonna go call Lyra or whoever. I'm like, oh wait, no, she got handed that phone number for
Mm-hmm.
Duval. And this was where I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like, she doesn't like strike a deal per se, but she just like says, I want to go home.
Yeah, what do I need to do?
So what do I need to
Um,
do? Yeah. So obviously there's going to be some trading of information here,
mm,
but I found it interesting that like, she decided not to go home earlier,
yeah.
help her friends, but now she's struggling again and she just wants to go home. What do you need?
So
Like,
I think it's deeper than that actually, and I think that whoever she's working for, because I think it's clear that May is working for someone else. I know I've said in the past I think it will be Apex, but I don't know if it will. I think, and again I'd have to double check this, but I'm fairly sure that in King of the Monsters, Charles Dance's character isn't working for Apex, but it's like an eco-terrorism organization. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's been sucked in by what they're doing, because Devul says about helping her to get out of a situation when she's first talking to her. So it's almost as if Devul can tell that May has mixed with the wrong people. They clearly have influence over her, and perhaps Monarch are able to get her out of that situation. So that's kind of the direction I think we're heading in. Is Monarch are going to help to get her out of whatever situation she has gotten herself into. And one of the reveals that we'll see is whoever this other organization or this other entity is who she's been working with.
what if it was, and because I thought it was interesting that, in that airport sequence, there was that mention of Strata or whatever the company's name
Yeah.
was, the underground home company. Like, I feel like that was too specific. That was a little too specific for a shout out like that. Like, they didn't have to give this company a name, but it had like a name, a logo. It looked legit. So it felt like an introduction to me. Like Biosyn. We've got Biosyn, a great company doing good things to help people and to help these dinosaurs. This is obviously a Jurassic discussion, if you're not familiar, but like, I was comparing it to that. Like, you've got this company that's doing good things, publicly facing, but behind the scenes, maybe that could be this company as well. I couldn't find anything about
It's
it.
possible, but what I would say on that is that Apex already plays that role to some extent in Godzilla versus Kong, because they're
Mhm.
presented as this good power company, and behind the scenes we know that they're building Mechagodzilla. With Charles Dance, so his character's Alan Jonah, I know that one of the things that people felt was very weird was that King of the Monsters happened and then Jonah then never came back. So I think this is a good opportunity for them to maybe flesh out some more of that character's motivations, because I mean, think about it. We know that this character has been working with Emma Russell in King of the Monsters, right? And he knows about the Monarch facilities because he goes and gets her from the facility that has Mothra. But actually, what if he first learns about the organization from these files?
I like it, man.
You're sat here like, what's he doing? What's going on?
I'm like, I can see. If you turn your camera, there is like a whiteboard there. Do you have
Yeah,
like, are there pinpoints all over that? Is that what's
there are.
happening?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, because
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I love it. I love it, dude. Keep going down your rabbit holes. This is great. Um,
If it's not obvious, I've been writing a book recently, so I'm quite used to trying to connect lots of different things.
I love it. I love hearing it. But that's the end of the episode 5. So that's exciting. Another great episode.
Yes.
No real monster
Do
attacks per
we?
se, but like it was still pretty great, I think. I love the
While
human
I've got it up,
aspects.
do you want me to give you the title and synopsis for episode 6?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Episode
So,
6.
episode 6 is Terrifying Miracles, and it says Shaw finds an unlikely ally within Monarch as the team has a harrowing run in. Keiko and Lee grow closer while at a military ball.
Okay, so wait, what was the title again?
So Keiko, I think Keiko and Lee are getting it on, and it's Terrifying Miracles. So I reckon this will
That
explain why Shaw hasn't aged.
that exactly is
Yeah,
what I was going with because that sounds like a mission gone bad. It was a little terrifying, but it was also a miracle because of what it did to him. So,
Yeah.
great. Good job. Good job looking up those episode titles. What was this one's
Yeah.
called? What was it?
This was The Way Out.
The Way
So
Out. Okay.
the double meaning that I referenced at the start is The Way Out because it's Kentaro finding the way out of the tunnel
Catman.
network.
Yeah.
But it's Catman, but it's also May finding the way out of the predicament she's got herself into.
Yeah.
I rest my case. Any film outlets that need writers or people to analyze films, please do slide into my DMs on Twitter.
Well,
or don't, because you don't want wild theories that end up being completely unsubstantiated. It's entirely up to you.
What is that outlet that they can find you at? What are your handles? Where can everybody find you online?
So people can find me at Tom_Jurassic on Twitter and Instagram, or X, not Twitter, X.
It's Twitter, man. It's just gonna be Twitter. I am not on Twitter anymore, really. Every now and then I'll post on the podcast feed, but mostly just like status updates, nothing really.
Yeah.
So we are on Threads, though. You can find us on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, here on YouTube, obviously, Facebook. I usually put these things up. There we go. Social card. There it is. There's our places.
Boom.
There you got it. We have fun on those places. I'm on Threads,
I always love
mostly.
That beautiful selfie.
Hey man, it's me in this spot right here. And you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or whatever it's called, Apple Podcasts, and Audible and Amazon Music, anywhere you find podcasts. Our website, JurassicParkPodcast.com. And I can be found also on Threads personally, and then Letterboxd, where you'll see reviews for such films as Godzilla -1. And what else am I doing? I just had a podcast come out the other day. What was it about? I'm trying to remember. It was Grim Grinning Hosts, and we talked about. Wow, literally cannot remember for the life of me what our episode was about. So who cares?
I think you had quite a chaotic recording recently as well.
Yeah, we did. But no, on Grim Grinning Hosts, we talked about we finally wrapped up our thoughts on Halloween Horror Nights, which was obviously at the end of October there. But
Nice.
finally gave our thoughts. And in the HHN community, nobody cares. Like they'll listen whenever. Because they just want to get that HHN goodness. So if you want to find out more what we thought, go listen to that. I was on the Forcecast recently. Hopefully should be on that again sometime soon. And then Tom and I did a conversation which just went some places. It was for the Jurassic Park podcast, and we talked about Chaos Theory, the upcoming animated TV show on Netflix for the Jurassic World franchise, a continuation of Camp Cretaceous. We were talking about it. It was directly recorded after our last Monarch episode, and I thought it was going to be great. I'm like, you know what? I got some notes. We're going to have a great time. And then the video popped off. It didn't work right. There was all kinds of issues technically and mentally. There was a lot going on there. I had a hard time focusing on what was going on because
you were
of
playing
all
a video game in the middle of the podcast.
And that was my least distracted moment, man. You pointed that out, and I'm like, dude, I'm good. I'm actually doing good right now. So there was a lot going on, but definitely go check out that conversation on the podcast feed. It's out there right now. And then the next episode of the podcast, which actually doesn't really usually air on YouTube here. Well, not this one, though. This one did air last night, actually. So you're going to get an early look at the next episode if you watch the live stream from I don't know, Thursday night, where we discuss the upcoming Jurassic Park video game, Jurassic Park Survival, which is like mind-blowing. So we talked all about that. That'll be aired in the next episode as well on the podcast feed, so check that out, I think. But yeah, thank you, Tom. Anything else to plug or promote?
No worries. Just loving this show. Can't wait for more of it.
Well, man, I appreciate you joining me as always here. We'll be back again for episode 6, whatever that one was called again. I completely forget. Maybe I'll figure it out.
Terrifying Miracles.
Ooh, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.